Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
The Daily Compliance News for November 10, 2023, the $13 billion question. We begin with that story from the BBC, which reports that a legal advisor to the European Court of Justice has argued a ruling allowing Apple to avoid paying 13 billion euros in back taxes should be overturned. The move is the latest in the long-running saga between the EU and U.S. tech giant and the Irish government. 3 years ago, a ruling found Apple had been given illegal tax breaks, but that ruling was overturned. So maybe Apple will actually have to pay taxes. Next up from Bloomberg, the bad news for the Portuguese-based Altice continues as bonds of Altice France SA plunged after the company said French police had searched its offices over a dispute with the tax authorities. The search related to VAT rates applied to the TV company's offers between 2013 and 2019. So Altice, boy, once you put it under the spotlight, seems like a lot scurrying around under there. Our next story is continued stories about corruption in Ukraine. It's not clear why the Wall Street Journal is pushing these, but they, as the EU recommends, membership talks start soon. Many EU leaders share U.S. concerns over the rule of law. And membership obviously could take years to complete, and the positive EU recommendation is rare news at a tense time. The war is clearly going very stalemate-ish, if that's a word, and Ukraine will continue to need all the help it can get. But the EU reported that Ukraine has completed 4 of 7 reforms and would need to complete the other 3 before membership negotiations begin. Ukraine says that over 90% of the work is done, so perhaps we can get moving forward. And our last article also comes from the Wall Street Journal. This time it's sustainable business, where Delta Airlines promised to cut net emissions to zero by 2030. But unlike other sectors where a company's carbon footprint primarily comes from customers and suppliers, in the airline business, it primarily comes from them. So the EU, or rather Delta, sorry about that, has decreed that it will move to more sustainable fuels going forward. Tomorrow's Veteran Day. If you know a veteran, please buy him a cup of coffee and say thank you. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.